Hey, what's going on, YouTube? It's Valsa, and today I want to talk to you about a topic that's literally been confusing me for more than 10 seasons, and that's engineering. All right, now, when you first start the game, you're going to get a few heroes. They have the engineering skills, particularly Ordo and Craig, right? It used to include Nico, but they recently changed that. He no longer has the engineering skills or talent tree, right? And you look at Ordo here, he's got a couple engineering skills. And same thing with Craig. He's got an engineering skill, and they recently made these holistic skills. Let's just talk about that real briefly. Holistic skills, basically, when you have them, they apply to all your legions everywhere, regardless of who's leading them. Even if the commander that has the holistic skills not in the field, all your legions are still going to get these benefits, right? And holistic skills, they apply to engineering, they apply to peacekeeping, and they apply to farming. But these heroes still have the talent trees. Ordo still has the talent tree that allows you to increase engineering values. And I've had Ordo built like this, probably since like season 3 or something, to maximize his engineering values. And, there's also the engineering artifact here, the Potion of Vigor. I've had this on Ordo since the day I got it. It gives him some engineering, then you can like click a little cooldown, which gives him a ton of more engineering for half an hour. And I always understood this, hey, like this is the best way to get the best building, the best destruction in the field. Send out your Ordo Craig, have them build. That's the best way to do it. That's a lie. All right, that's probably a mistake. You shouldn't do that, and we'll talk about more of that later on. But let's talk about engineering values really quickly here. All units have an engineering value, and what you'll find is that the engineering value of infantry is always the highest, right? My tier 5 engineering value here is 14, and as you go down, it gets a little lower, 12, 10, 8, and 6, etc. All other units have an engineering value equal to their tier level. For example, my tier 5 Cav have an engineering value of 5. And if you look at the mages, it's the same thing. Tier 5 have an engineering value of 5, but if you check out tier 4, it's 4, and 3, so on. There are two exceptions to this. If you look at your work units, your donkeys, your work elves, etc., they have an engineering value of 6. So that's the second highest engineering value after infantry. Just a strange little quirk here. The other exception is flying units have a lower engineering value. Now, they used to have 0 engineering value whatsoever, but when they made the change to Wyvern Riders, you had to give Wyvern Riders obviously an engineering value, and so they gave all flying units an engineering value to go along with that. So I always thought, hey, put your best, engineering hero, Ordo, Craig, or whatever, building a building, get as many troops up there. You want infantry, let's do it fast, fast, fast. Okay, that's not exactly how it works. When you're building, when you're destroying, the game cares only about two things. The first is getting a minimum engineering value on whatever you're building or destroying. And the second is the number of legions performing that action. All right, there's a couple different cases here. Let's talk about building first. All right, we take a look at this building here. It's building at 1 point a second. No one's on it. I'm going to put my strongest 310,000 Ordo Craig unit on this building. It's got the engineering artifact. I'm going to quick build there. Let's see what it goes to. 11.3, and that's the magic number. Once you have 11.3, you've met the minimum threshold. Once you've met that minimum threshold, the game only cares now about the number of legions building or destroying whatever it is. For example, I'm going to put another full infantry legion on there. Ordo Craig, lots of engineering value there. Let's see how that changes. Right, the first one, it went up from 1 to 11.3. The second time, it goes from 11.3 to 11.61. A very minimal gain. Okay, I'm going to take that legion off, and now I'm going to put a single tier 3 mage on there. This is a 1-unit legion. Let's see how it changes. Suspense is killing you. Once again, 11.6. Once you've met that minimum value, now it only cares about the number of legions building, right? Since my first legion's big enough, it's got enough engineering value, we can have up to 35 more legions, and they can all be a single legion, and they'll all do the same effect, okay? Now, there's a maximum build value. I think it's 21.91. Look, obviously, you can have the legion's build buff. Look, obviously, there are things like buildings in battlefields that can increase the build speed. There's also sometimes in-game effects that increase the build speed. But outside that, the maximum build value is 21.91. And the important thing here is that each player, each account can only have 1 legion building at a time. Once you get that minimum engineering value, which you can achieve with a single unit, The rest, all those legions can be a single legion march and they'll have the same value. Okay, now let's talk about destroying. The rules for destroying are very similar. You need that minimum value. After you get that minimum value of 11.3, each additional legion gives you the same effect. There are two changes when it comes to destroying. The first change is that any player can have up to 5 legions destroying the same building, and then they'll all take effect. The second change when it comes to destroying is that Wyvern Riders, and only Wyvern Riders, can destroy above the 21.91 Legion. They have a special skill, Bombing Run, that allows them to destroy from range and also allows you to breach the 21.91 points per second. With Wyvern Riders, you can get that up to 25 destroy points a second. The last thing we should talk about is Siege Bastions, and it's kind of similar, but it's a little tricky. When you first drop a Siege Bastion, it has the same value. It cares about meeting that minimum engineering value. Once you've met that minimum engineering value, each additional legion is going to increase the build speed of the Bastion, right? You've probably been in a KVK at some point when your alliance leader was screaming at you to get 10,000 infantry into the Bastion. That's the reason for this. You need that first or at least a couple strong infantry legions to get that minimum value, and then after that you want as many players in the Bastion as possible to increase the build speed. Now the one caveat here is the Bastion will allow you to put as a single player multiple legions in that Bastion, but in terms of that engineering value, it cares about the number of players, not the number of legions. So if you put 5 infantry legions in the Bastion, it's only going to count for building purposes as having 1 infantry legion in there. Okay, so once you've met that initial 11.3 points per second, is there any point into putting full legions on the tower? Yes, but not directly. Obviously, if you're in a combat environment and you're putting full legions on the tower, you're making full legions vulnerable, but they can defend themselves better. If you only have a single full legion building the tower and that full legion goes and gets killed by, enemy cav or something like that, then the tower's build speed's going to drop radically down. But if you have a lot of full legions building, then obviously the enemy has to do a lot more damage. So you're risking more, but you have some insurance, you have some backup for building purposes there. All right, hey, that's it. That's what I wanted to talk to you about engineering today. I didn't understand these rules until, like I said, midway through my 11th season. Now when I'm building, if I'm one of the first builders out there, I'll put that full, Gorge Skullgirl out there to get that minimum value. Otherwise, I'm sending a single, tier 2 cav or a single workhorse or something like that, just to get that additional 0.3 per second, right? If you've got a farm account or you've got an alt account that's Wilderberg, send that single Wyvern Rider out there because it's the same thing with the destruction value. That single 1-unit Wyvern Rider can destroy as well as, a full 300,000 unit of Wyvern Riders, provided you've got that minimum destruction value on the tower to begin with. All right? I hope this was some value to you, and until next time, stay classy, Belleron. Hey, that's it. Now I feature a number of war pet themed series on this channel, and I'm always looking for more war pets to feature. Now this could be a pet you're struggling with, and you'd like in-depth advice on how to build it out, or it could be a super strong pet, and you'd like to see it featured in the Doom Pet series. I try to help anyone who needs it with any war pet related issues. So if you do send something in, please let me know whether you're interested in being featured in one of my videos, or if you're just looking for some quick advice. I'm happy to help either way. I also try to address more general, pet-related questions the community might have. If you have any of those, please let me know in the comments below. I want to thank everyone for stopping by and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed this content or found it helpful, please hit that like and subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. And until next time, stay classy, Belleron.